Hello everyone, so Season 2 is about to begin, and I thought I should make one of these update videos where I talk you through the most recent news, and of course it's just going to be news that are relevant to Warriors. So I've got some class tuning, there's some item tuning as well, which affects us, and there's an unexpected build that has been discovered as well, which I just really didn't see coming, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And I'm going to talk about Arms versus Fury as well, in the context of Arms versus Fury in M+ and Raid, and which spec I think is going to be better on which boss in the Raid as well. So let's get straight into it. So the nerf, the class tuning, is Arms' execute damage has been reduced by 15%. So this nerf is really not unexpected. So I saw a nerf coming from a mile away, and I'm actually quite happy that they've just hit execute like this. I think it's a well-targeted nerf. Just for some context, if you're surprised about this nerf, a lot of the top guilds I've heard were preparing 3 or more DPS warriors, despite possibly running a prot warrior as well. So when the top guilds are preparing that many warriors, you know, there is something wrong, and we probably are too strong. And also some of the raid bosses are really execute focused as well. Like the hardest part of the fights are during execute phase. So having more execute then obviously is big value. So what builds does this affect the most? So this will obviously affect single target Arms Slayer with Juggernaut the most, because execute is a bigger portion of your damage with that spec. And it hits obviously the execute phase the most, but also the non-execute phase where you get loss of sudden death procs. Yeah. Anyway, for Colossus M+ though, for example, it hardly does anything, which is something I'm happy about. So just for some context, in an M+ overall breakdown, just using this one from yesterday, it looks like a Necrotic Wake, I did 1.9% of my overall damage with execute. So if that was reduced by 15%, my overall would barely be affected, right? So yeah, it hardly affects our M+ build. It will be, no, not really noticeable on single target, but it's on single target where it slightly hits Colossus, I guess. Anyway, Archie has a damage breakdown here, or numbers for us anyway. So he says Slayer loses 3.6% of its single target damage from this nerf. Colossus Juggernaut, if you for whatever reason played that, loses 2.6%, and Battlelord Colossus loses 1.8% on single target. Slayer is still ahead of Colossus about 4 to 5%. Overall, he says this is a slap on the wrist, which I completely agree with. It's not that bad, guys. It's not that bad. I think we'll still be very solid in raid. Might still be among the best. So don't worry about it. We're still good. He does say that this nerf could possibly affect protection as well, because often when they nerf execute for one of the for either Arms or prot, they often share the same sort of spell ID or something. So, or same coefficient. We'll just have to wait and see if it actually nerfs prots execute, but not the biggest deal, I guess, if it does. Next up is item tuning. So they have nerfed the Roaring War Queen's Citrine and the Legendary Skipper's Citrine. So this is the one I'm concerned with. So Legendary Skipper's Citrine is one of our best, well, it was one of our best gems, I can't remember what they're called, for the circlets. Now, Archie has written about this as well, so obviously credit to Archie for all this stuff here. He says that the nerf to the the nerf to the Legendary Skipper takes the ring down by about 1.2%. But Windsinger is now slightly better than Legendary Skipper. So Legendary Skipper is here, and this, I believe, is a max item level Mythic ring. So max item level Mythic ring will beat the circlet eventually, but you can expect to use the circlet for a while until you get 2 bis rings, basically. So yeah, we're going to be keeping this for a while, I suppose. but once you get 2 bis rings, you can finally replace that thing. Right, next up is the unexpected build that I mentioned. So credit to Timmy and Wally, I think he looked into this as well, and all the other people that have been working on this strange discovery here. So it all looks normal, right? But then you look, and Ravager is being played in Slayer arms. And for context, Slayer kind of revolves around Bladestorm, no pun intended. Overwhelming Blades doesn't work without Bladestorm. Culling Cyclone and Brutal Finish don't work without Bladestorm. So when you have Ravager Spect and not Bladestorm, these 2 things are like grayed out because they're not in effect. But Bladestorm apparently is so bad that it's not even worth taking, despite that. Ravager is just a better version of Bladestorm because it allows you to press abilities whilst it's active, whereas with Bladestorm you're AFKing for up to 6 seconds, because that's how long Bladestorm is, but it goes faster depending on your haste. So yeah, the opportunity cost of Bladestorm is pretty bad, because Bladestorm itself deals very low damage. It's mostly Unhinged that makes Bladestorm good on single target. So yeah, here are the numbers anyway. It's relatively equal, right? But the fact that Ravager in the first place is this close and actually very slightly beats the intended Bladestorm build is kind of crazy to me. So these numbers, by the way, are with current 369 gear. So don't worry too much about the numbers here. We're mostly looking at the percentage difference between the 2 specs. So yeah, it basically looks the same as a normal Bladestorm Slayer build, except it has Ravager. Very, very strange. And I do have some numbers on this. I don't know where they are right now. But actually, I do have them. Hold on 1 second. Here it is. So this is a sim that is set to execute phase only for 3 minutes. And as you can see, Slayer Ravager is 3.8% ahead of Bladestorm Slayer arms in the actual execute phase. That's a substantial difference. Of course, that means that your non-execute damage as Ravager Slayer is lower, but your in-execute damage is higher. So on any bosses that highly emphasize the execute phase, you would probably want to always play Ravager Slayer in this case. To me, this is kind of insane, mind-blowing even. But yeah, hopefully Blizzard, upon seeing this, will do something to make Bladestorm actually good. Because when you press Bladestorm, it just feels so bad to be sitting there AFKing for so long, and Bladestorm's damage itself just isn't impressive. So yeah, hopefully they do something. So next up is the embellishments. The absolute best for us is going to be the best in slots weapon on Mythic, and Capital Punisher on Mythic as well. But early on, we're not going to have access to that, because you actually need to kill these bosses, and they actually need to drop the weapons as well, and you actually need to be given these weapons too if they do drop. So we can't expect to have this realistically for a while, so that's out of the question. Now, I think early on, we're going to end up doing the Ascension weapon. So we'll craft a weapon at 675 and put Ascension on it, and then do an off-piece with the Nerubian armor writhing. So that is probably the best play for pretty much Arms and Fury, actually. So if you do get heroic best in slots, though, that can change very slightly. You can sim yourself and try different combinations in that case. And maybe in that case, you would want to do 2 stat embellishments, such as Dusk and Dawn Thread. Oh, sorry, Dusk or Dawn, or a combination of both, whichever one seems better. So that is my plan. I will most likely end up crafting the Ascension main hand weapon. And there's a nice bonus for Fury as well if you do that, right? Because if you do craft the 675 crafter weapon, then you can upgrade your heroic M+ weapon to max without spending any crests, because you've already got the discount because you crafted the other 200 weapon here. So it depends on what I get. It depends on my sims, but hopefully this gives you a better idea. But as long as you do either crafted weapon or crafted off pieces with the stat embellishments, you're fine. I don't think you need to overthink it too much. But if you are min-maxing, you should probably sim yourself and check all the combinations. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit with regards to embellishments. Now, moving on, there are some DPS rankings on Wowhead, and they actually put arms in S tier, the sole S tier in the raid. So this nerf here, 15% execute damage nerf, it might make a little bit more sense now for those who weren't aware of arms, how good arms actually is, you know. So it does say here, arms does exceptionally well in stacked 2-target situations thanks to sweeping strikes, but this season it's also looking great in pure single target too, which is typically the most important damage type to have in the raid setting. This tier also features 2 encounters late in the raid that have burn phases which begin at low health, which makes arms' execute damage especially valuable. Even as Blizzard aimed a small nerf at the execute ability during the first week of the season. So they are even aware of the 15% execute nerf, and even then, arms is S tier in raid. All right, that's what I think, and I would kind of agree. I'm not sure if it's the only S tier spec, but yeah, it sounds reasonable. I'm not going to argue against it. It's definitely either in A++ or S tier, so I agree with that. Fury is slightly lower here. I'm actually interested in what they've got to say about that. Fury is a very cozy melee to play in raid, with a cooldown suite that can be adjusted easily to work well on most encounters of pretty much any amount of targets or ad spawn timings. Its overall damage is very high too, though it has quite a weak 4-piece set bonus, so it may fall off as players gain their set bonuses. Yes, this is very true. So for context, the difference between arms 0-piece and 4-piece at the same item levels, arms gains about 8% damage, and Fury from 0-piece to 4-piece, same item level, is about 3%, right? So if Fury kind of owns the first couple of days before people get their set bonuses, people might overestimate how strong Fury actually is, because when everyone gets their set bonuses, the difference will sort of close up, right? So yeah. Warriors bring Battle Shout, which is valuable, true, and Rallying Cry, which was nerfed substantially back in Dragonfight, yep, and is much less of a consideration than it used to be. Fury in particular is quite strong defensively. This is true. Many people actually don't understand that Fury is tanky, but Fury has a really big health pool because it's using 2 2-handed weapons. It has War Paint, which is a really strong damage reduction, which is pretty much always active. You have Defensive Stance, which is on demand minus 15% DR all the time. And you also have Spell Effect, which is a 20% damage reduction for magic sources anyway, for 5 seconds, and can also reflect on spells. And Enraged Regen is also a really solid defensive, especially if you couple it with Bladestorm or Ravager with Unhinged. But because Arms looks very strong, Fury may not see much play, but it certainly still can hold its own and may well be a consideration of some fights, especially those with AoE burst windows. So yeah, I kind of agree with this. I actually think that I actually wrote this up myself. So I was looking at raid guides for the raid, right? And I was just ranking them live, or not ranking them live, but I was predicting which spec will play on which bosses live. And this is after the execute nerf as well. And I think the first boss, Gear Grinder, you can play Fury because there are ads. You'll do more damage, and you probably won't lose much of the single target damage because Fury barely loses any single target damage while it's cleaving. For Cauldron of Carnage, you probably will play Arms because there are 2 targets there. You don't always get the 2 target sweep, but during the intermission, you get some really good value from sweeping strikes. On Rick Reverb, I think it's probably Fury. There are some ads, and you can, by the way, you can leap over the circle apparently. Don't quote me on that. I was told that you can leap over the circle, so I just put that note there. On Styx, it looks like a Fury fight. Sprocketmonger is a pure single target boss. There's some uptime issues in that boss, possibly, because there's a lot of stuff to avoid. So whichever one ends up doing the most single target, considering that uptime. Maybe this could be a boss fight where you play Reckless Abandon, because that spec doesn't suffer so much from low uptime, because you need uptime to make anger management good. So if you play anger management Arms of Fury, you might lose a lot of potential DPS because you can't always get CDR. And for one armed bandit, I think it's either Arms or Fury. It might well be Arms just because of the burn phase at the end, the execute phase at the end being that important. But it's not like Fury's execute is that bad, right? So we'll see. And Mugsy as well. There are some ads there that you can cleave and sweep. I think it just depends. I have no predictions for the last boss though, because we haven't seen any videos on that boss. So yeah, that's what I think right now. I might be wrong. This is probably what I'm going to try first, and I might change my mind when I actually play them in person. But hopefully that gives you some idea of what I think, at least there. Now, moving on to the DPS Mythic Plus rankings here. So they put Arms in A-. This is, I think it's Tettles that wrote this one. Yes, Tettles wrote that one, and Dratnos wrote the raid one. So for the Arms one, yeah, A-. I'm okay with being A- in keys, honestly. Like, it felt like I was a B or low B tier for most of season 1. So, you know, just being decent is good enough for me, or pretty good is good enough for me. I never want to be S tier or A+++ tier in M+, because then, you know, you're meta and you're just looking to get nerfed if you're a warrior. If you're a different class, maybe you don't get nerfed, but anyway. Just a little bit of salt there, I'm sorry. Let's scroll down here, see what they say about Arms. I actually read this one already. So Arms is a spec that does incredible overall damage, is low-key one of the better specs this tier. They're playing Colossus currently with Demolish. They have fantastic single target damage in their M+ build while also having great AoE. There have been streamers like me who have made this spec look excellent. I think it's really cool that they shouted me out here. Really good for my ego. Anyway, prior to receiving a 5% aura nerf, there was heavy consideration of another viable composition that played around Arms Warrior and Battle Shout. Still possible with something like a Mistweaver, Bear Druid, Enhanced Shaman, and Sub Rogue, for example. So a physical damage group. But he thinks that a group like that would probably be a little bit lower of a cap than other potential comps, but probably about half a key level maybe. And that's a really nice place to be. If, for example, this comp with an Arms Warrior is just like half a key level or 1 key level behind the meta comp, that's pretty damn good. No complaints there. But let's see how it plays out in practice, I guess. I don't know what they said about Fury. Fury's AoE damage and self-healing is powerful. Fury's 5 target damage is powerful. Up to 5 targets. Anything beyond that? No. On top of this, they have some of the stronger AoE burst cooldowns in the game. Not so true now, especially as Mountain Thane. Downside is that their sustained damage is a bit lower than other potential options. Yeah, sure, kind of. Fury also got pretty heavy nerfs in the beginning of Nerubar. Yes. And are still impacting them this tier. In addition to that, their survivability and self-healing from things like Cold Steel, Hot Blood, Impending Victory, and Enraged Region are top-notch. True. The downside of their utility is that it is of limited benefit to the rest of the party. Yeah. It's as if they're playing their own game. Yeah. Yes. That's a very common complaint about warrior DPS in M+. Couple of issues. Largest issue is target cap. Yeah. Other main problem is that the overall damage is just a hair behind some of the other top tier options. They have well balanced AoE and single target, but without a bit more throughput, it's hard to justify moving them above B. I think it's a fair-ish... Yeah, it's a fair assessment, actually. I'd say so. If Arms is A-, then Fury is probably B in M+. So, yeah. There's definitely space for improvement. Again, it's the target cap that really makes Fury not that great in keys. It really limits our viability there, I think, because you're always going to try to pull more than 5 targets in keys. You need to make up time. And to make up time, you need to pull bigger. But if we're capped to 5, then well, we don't benefit that much from the big pulls. So, in conclusion, for Arms versus Fury in raids, the tier list here says Arms does look Arms significantly better than Fury, but I think the difference is going to be much closer than this suggests. I think actually Fury might even be played on more bosses, possibly. But we'll have to wait and see how things actually play out. You know, maybe some of the fights are more suited for Arms than Fury. Although Arms does have a very slightly less sim DPS than Fury now. But sim DPS is not everything, right? So we'll have to wait and see. But I think both specs are in a very solid position. I wouldn't worry too much. I think we're very much going to be valuable in the raid. And for Mythic Plus, I mostly agree with this tier list, actually. I think Arms will be better than Fury in keys because it brings decent enough single target and it brings pretty damn good AoE. And it has damage all the time. The cooldowns are very short on our damage windows. Our main damage windows are just Warbreaker and Demolish and Cleave Spam. And for Fury is playing not playing Reckless Abandon, I think, actually. It's going to be playing Anger Management, which means it will have damage more often. But the 5 target cap is just too brutal. So, yeah. Anyway, I do think both Arms and Fury are significantly better in Season 2 than they were in Season 1. So, yeah, at least we've got that going for us, because in Season 1, I really felt like both specs were pretty damn bad. And if you're wondering where these tier lists are and you want to look at everything yourself, you can just go to Wowhead, scroll all the way down, and down here, under WoW Guides, you just click tier lists, and here they are. So, yeah, I guess that's all I've got. I hope you found this video interesting, funny, or at least useful. So that's it for me today. I'll obviously be playing a lot of M+ when the season begins. I'll be raiding as well, but my raid is 1 day after the season launches. So the first day of the season, I'm going to be spamming M+ all day. So tune into my stream for that if you want to. But otherwise, enjoy the season, and I'll see you next time.